Hi friends, so today we have a really exciting lesson. We are going to start building our own landscape. So we're going to start looking at some clouds, some trees, creating depth, foreground, how we can make all of these things a bit more interesting. We've done perspective, you've looked at composition, so now we're sort of taking that next step and we are going to build our own landscape image. Now to do that, we're going to look at a couple of examples, because the best thing you can do is to look at quite a few photographs and from there start building your own landscape or the elements that you like, or if you are sitting somewhere and you want to be able to do distant mountains and some flowers in the foreground or trees or anything like that. So let's have a look at how we can start building these things. So to do that, we look at a couple of examples. Now, some of these, or most of these, are actually my own photos. Some of them are some of my dad's photos that I've got, but we're going to look at each one of them and sort of look at colors, look at detail that we can see, and all sorts of things. Okay, so our first one is actually this one is in the Blue Mountains, I think. And what I want you to notice first of all is, of course, the clouds over here. So it's almost like it's done on a 1-point perspective. So if I put a point there and I sort of draw my point out, you can see that these clouds almost form or go in the shape of coming in. Okay, now with this one, I'd probably say the point, if we look at this, they're going all this way. So my point is probably actually around here somewhere, all of it radiating towards this point. Okay, there you can see how nicely that forms. So what do you need to notice about clouds? First of all, obviously you can see a lot more detail here in the foreground, in the top part of your clouds. You can see that the background clouds are smaller, less detailed. You can see the sky is darker at the top and then it's lighter over here. So those are those little things that you need to notice when you start building your own landscape. Another thing that we can look at here, let me just erase this. Okay, another thing that we can look at here is our mountains, so distant mountains. So let's have a look. With this app I can show you colors well, and I quite like, if you do have an iPad, get yourself the Procreate app, because it can really help you to define colors. So if we have a look at this and I go to the background and I look at my sky, so if I put my finger on it, it's going to catch what color that actually is. So that distant mountain over there is this color. And then as we come closer, I'm going to do it a little bit over, you can see that we're actually going a bit darker. So let's go to this one. So darker still. And then this one, as you can see, that's very dark. So that's that color. So those are the 4 colors for my background mountains. Do you see light blue all the way to a very dark blue? Let me zoom in there for you. Okay, so those are the colors of the distant mountains. So how can you create depth in your painting? If you're doing mountains or you're doing distant objects, go for blue tones, because it really helps to create that depth into your painting. Okay, another thing that we can look at here is our trees. So look at your foreground. Obviously I'm zooming in, so the quality is not that great, but there's trees over there and you can't really see any detail on them. As we come forward, they are lighter, they are brighter, they are catching some of the sun, and you can see details in them. You can see some of the tree branches and all kinds of things. So That's what I want you to notice on this photo. Next one. So let's have a look at the clouds again. First of all, can you see that it's almost again as if it's a 1-point perspective, and the perspective would probably be a little bit off the screen over here, but you can see it's actually looking like it's moving this way. So my perspective is probably over there somewhere, my point. So when you're drawing clouds, it's a good idea to continue using 1-point perspective because it will guide you to more natural looking clouds. Another thing that you can notice here, of course, this is a very dark photo. It's got a reflection here, so the clouds is catching some light and it's reflected here. We have a reflection from this mountain area as well, and again we can see those are done in a very dark blue and then even darker. So those are the two colors of the mountains over there. Okay, the tree over here as well, really very dark because it is obviously the light's more coming from the back and it is still dark, so it's just starting to become sunrise. So this photo was taken in the Blue Mountains, and then a couple of minutes later this is actually what the sky looked like. So same place, as you can see, here's my reflection in the water, but the clouds have moved now a little bit. Now when I look at this, it's almost like, again, you can see there's some soft clouds in the sky today, but you can see smaller as we go closer to the back, and then these are soft, just soft clouds that we have over here. Okay. Don't know why it's not drawing at the moment. Oh, because I am at the back of it. Okay, let me just erase that. Okay, so again, our clouds over here, it's our mountains. This time it's a more brown color as it's catching some of the sky, and then these trees over here nice and dark. So dark colors for your background, and always remember, if you're doing water, your sky is reflected in your water as well. Okay, let's have a look. Next one. So just a quick look, we can see the mountains are blue in the background. As it comes forward they become more green, so there's a dark green, there's a blue for background mountain. You can see the 1-point perspective this road is following. You can see grass details here in the front, but you can't see them there at the back. So how do we create distance? By not adding too much detail, but details in the front. Your background's not going to have a lot of detail in it. You can see same with the clouds. You can see there's different types of clouds over here. So this is just a soft cloud. There we have some more detailed clouds with more of a detailed shape, and then more in the background you just have soft white clouds. Next one is a rain cloud. Now this is on my granddad's farm in Namibia, and just have a look at the details in the cloud. So we sort of have these layers in the cloud, and then so darker, so this one there, and then we sort of have these, goes darker, and then at the back close to my horizon it's light again. So dark at the top and then working towards a lighter area. And of course it's raining over here, so we can't really see any of the details because we have all of that rain coming down as well. Again, trees in the background, dark green, lighter green, whoops, lighter green, different variations and colors of green, but our background stays the darkest, and then as we come forward we're moving to lighter green. So easy ways to create depth and details. Of course these plants here in front, we have more colors and details on them because they've got shadows. As you can see here, for example, this tree, whoops, it's got a shadow area over there, it's got a lighter area over here. So we still, even though it's in the distance, we're still building on those layers. Okay, next image, again, this is also on my granddad's farm. It's a lookout point, so I just want you to notice soft clouds, smaller at the back, and just let's have a look at those distant trees, very dark green. As we come forward, they become a bit lighter. The grass is nice and bright. And then do you see the shadows underneath each tree? And then details here in front, nice and dark again. So background dark, middle ground lighter, and then foreground has got details and it's darker again. Okay, let's have a look at these clouds again. As you can see, more detail over here because these clouds are closer to you. And then as we go closer to the horizon, they are smaller, they are less detailed, less edges. Here you can still see pretty much the edge. So there's darker spots in each cloud. So let's have a look at those colors. So that's like a light gray, and this one is a bit of a darker. Oh, it's the same, exactly the same color. And then we have a darker area for our clouds as well. So clouds are white, but how do we create shadows in them? We start adding some gray or some blue in between to make it look like there's sky and light and things coming through. Okay, next photo, just want to show you this cloud over here. So this space you will keep white if you're doing something like this, or a very pale yellow, but you can see that is white. If I hold my finger there and it catches that color, it is white. So we leave that space white, but then we blend into it the grays that we've got here, that color, and a darker gray at the edge. And then right there at the edge, I'm going to try and go to it right at the edge. What color do we have there again? A very, very light gray, or even a very light yellow or white. Okay, so just building on that, leaving space white again. And then I just wanted to show you this cloud because it's so impressive. I took this photo so many years ago, but I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorites. I mean, look at that. Look at that cloud. Whoops. Just look at that cloud. Isn't it amazing? I absolutely love it. We were driving in a ute in Namibia, and I looked back in the mirror and I just saw this rain falling here and just this impressive looking cloud, just this one and that one, and it was the only clouds in the sky that day and it rained just on that little spot. I mean, that's just amazing. So my point is, clouds can really look any way you want them to look. They can be very detailed. It depends, of course, what feeling you want to create in your painting, what we are working with, what sort of a sky you want. Do you want it dark and gloomy? Do you want it light and sunny? So your clouds can look really any way they want to, but just if you keep those basics in mind, keeping some white, adding some gray, adding some blue. And if you are doing lots of clouds in the sky, maybe use 1 point perspective, and that will really make a big difference in your painting. Okay, let's have a look at some trees. So this is a tree, summertime after the rain, and you can see it's quite an impressive looking tree over here. But what I do want you to notice is just obviously we have some light catching on some of the tree trunks over here. So always try and create in your tree. Don't just make it flat brown. Try and create some darker areas where, if you think especially the bottom part is going to be darker and the top part is going to catch some of that light or sun. Darker areas in your tree trunk. Use browns and different kinds of browns and some blues, even Payne's gray. So drop in different colors to create texture and to create depth, and it just makes it so much more interesting. Same tree, different season. Look at that difference. So again, we do have some light areas coming through in that tree. We do have some dark areas. Sorry, these photos are really old. It's also from my granddad's farm in Namibia, and just incredible to see the difference. Less leaves on the trees, lots of little twigs and branches and things, and those can all be created with a rigger brush. So and then there's some light catching. There's all shadows. What side is my shadow falling? What does it look like? Think of those things when you look at photos. Okay, with this one I wanted to show you, let's just go there. So of course we have big shadow over here. We have the tree trunk really dark because it's falling all in the shadow. As you can see, it's very there's not a lot of light coming through these leaves here at the top, so it's very dark underneath this tree. Let's just have a quick look again. So right here at the back there, I have a nice dark green over there, and then over here it's dark as well. So there's lots of differences next to each other. It's not just one green. And then as we come to the front, so even if you think, oh, shadows you should do in black, if you have a look at this, it's very, very dark green. It's this color, so it's a very dark green. It does look black, but it's a very, very dark green. So you do want to use or you can even do a blue or a Payne's gray for shadows, but be mindful to try and not use black for shadows and objects. Rather use blue, or mix a little bit of blue with black if you don't have a Payne's gray. So background tree is darker, and then in the front we can see we do have some details that we can actually see, which you can't see there at the back. Okay, let's have a look at this one. Look at how the whole color scheme changes. This is still Namibia, but it's just a different season than the previous one. It's a different tree as well. But just look at the difference, the vast difference in grasses. This is the grasses and the details. It's just incredible. And here you can see no bright greens being used. So depends. You have to think about these things. What season is it? What do you want to create? What do you want people to feel when they look at this? No clouds in the sky. Maybe you can do this one, but add some clouds to it. Look at the shadows and the colors in my tree trunk. So yeah, I want to encourage you to look at the world through different eyes. Look at the world in detail. In other words, look at the colors in the background, colors in the foreground. We're almost done looking at these, and then we will go into painting a landscape. Okay, so again, there is a with this one, there's a distant mountain. Let's look at the color. Soft blue, and then we have some trees and vegetation there. What are they? Dark green. What are these ones? Darker green. Do you see my sky is reflected? Do you see there is a shadow area in my water? So if you're doing water on the opposite side of your water you will have shadow falling. So let's look at the trees in the foreground. It's this color, we put it there. Let's look at the grasses on this side. It's a brownish color where that's green and lush next to the river. So let's look at these ones, nice and bright green. So greens, different greens being used. Don't just use one green, don't just use one flat color. Use different ones to create depth. So again, just for this one, I want to show you distant mountains. Again, it's that very soft blue color, and then as we come to the foreground we can see more details. This is from Iceland when we were there in 2019, and it was a very foggy day, so you can see there that it's lots of fog in the background. So this whole top part is drawn very soft, which you'll do probably wet on wet kind of way. Again, even though it's mountains, you can see some of these areas, and even though you tend to want to make them black, look at that, it is sort of a greenish color, and I'll even add a blue to that as well. And then as we move to the foreground, these rocks over here are much darker than in the back. As you can see, the difference between those ones and this one. The grass, also the moss that they have here is bright green. So and as we come closer to us, there's some brighter areas and darker areas as well. Okay, and then just lastly, I want us to have a look at some flowers. So if you're doing something like a field of flowers, so what do I want you to notice here? Look at the detail that you can see on these flowers, for example, and then the same flower in the background. Can you see the same amount of detail? No, you cannot. Grasses as well. So what do you want to do when you're building that landscape? You really want to focus on details in the front and less details in the back to create that depth. With watercolor, you can really limit your details. Just a couple of flowers in the front will already give the idea of the flower, a field of flowers. So you really just want to keep it to a minimalist. Don't go overboard with your details unless that's something that you really enjoy to do. But with watercolor, you don't have to. You can use the water to your advantage. And once you grasp that, it takes some time. Of course, it takes some time to practice. This is not easy. But the more you do it, the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. So don't give up. If this is something you enjoy, just do what you enjoy. Whether your landscape really looks terrible in the end, you've learned something from it. There's no painting that can just be thrown away with absolutely nothing that you've learned from it. Every mistake is a learning opportunity. So I have a big box here at the back of me on the floor that I can show you that's full of learning opportunities. Okay, and then the last one that I want to show is also a field of flowers, and we can just see the detail in it for our flowers. Lots of detail here in the front for all my little flowers, and then as it goes further to the back, you can see less and less of the detail. You can still see it's flowers, it's not just blotches. So you can add a tiny bit of detail to them, but don't go overboard with it. Just get the general shape right. So what is my shape? Oops. It's a circle. It's an oval. So just work on that general shape of it, which will already make a difference. Okay, so let's get into painting something, a landscape. Okay, now I really want to use some of the elements that we saw in a lot of those photos. I want to use in my image today. So I've drawn a rough sketch. I don't know if you can really see it, but I might add in here when I sketch it, but I don't think I did it very dark so that you could see it. But in any case, so I did some clouds with like a 1-point perspective to the middle. And then I have a big tree over here. I've got some distant mountains. I've got some trees in the background. And then I'm going to do like a field of flowers over here. So let's give it a go. When I look at this, I can start with my clouds. I can start with my distant mountains. I can start with my trees over here. So have a think about how you want to paint it. So what I often do in my workshops is I will paint something to give something else a chance to dry. So what I might do is I might start with this line of trees over here. Maybe the top mountain then next. And then I'll start with the sky down. I'll do the tree last because we're going to add some dark and light into that. Okay, so let's just start. Let's give it a go. So I've got some paper towel here that can also help me to create some clouds. I love using paper towel for clouds to make it look a bit more natural. Let's give my paints a spray. Okay. So I'm going to use my number 8 Princeton brush. And I have a cloth here. Okay. The paints that I'm using today is my Winsor & Newton Cotman paints. So let's start. Oh, I made all this wet when I sprayed. Whoopsie. Okay. Let me start with those distant mountains, because I do have a soft blue here on my palette. So I'm going to start with the one right here at the back. Just a soft blue. Okay, now I'm going to make this blue a little bit darker, so I'm adding a darker blue to it. And I'm going to paint this mountain over here. And it's okay for me at this stage if they bleed into each other a little bit. It's distant mountains, so I'm not going to be too precise about do it a bit darker. Now I might also go over the tree line here to already give that tree line a layer of blue, and to avoid having like a weird line there between the tree and the mountain. Does that make sense? There we go. So let's allow that to dry a little bit before I do my trees. Just want to soften it here. where I have my tree trunk. Just going over it with water, letting that water sit for a little bit. And then I'll use my microfiber cloth to pick that up and soften it a little. Okay, let's do our clouds. So for my clouds, I'm going to spray especially the top area of the sky. And let's grab a nice blue. Remember, darker at the top. And then I might just use a bit of water, so without cleaning my brush. I've obviously made it very wet because it's all bleeding into one now, but we'll fix that with a paper towel in just a bit. So just getting some water so that I can just do some softer clouds here and a softer sky. Okay, paper towel. Now where it's made these really big puddles, just dabbing it dry. Now you can just continue working this until you are happy with the result. You can use your brush as I am now to lift up some color again, to soften some of the edges. So just wet your brush and then use that to soften the edges, blend, lift up some areas that you want lighter. And then I might just do some darker areas in the sky, and as we said, gray. So I'm just going to drop in some water here, and in this one, and in that one, and I'm going to use Payne's Grey, just a tiny bit, just to drop in here. Remember, watercolor dries softer or lighter, so don't be afraid to up your shadows a little bit. Wash your brush, soften it. And then using that paper towel, just create a more natural look in those clouds. And again, you just continue working it till you are happy with the result. Okay, I think my clouds are fine the way they are. I like them. So I just want to fix this line over here a little bit, where my sky meets my mountains. Okay, let's do our tree line. So dark green. If you don't have a very dark green, you can always add a bit of Payne's grey or a bit of dark blue to it, just to give it a bit of a boost. Okay, still using that same brush, just gonna dab on the horizon line. As you can see, mine's quite wet, so I'm just doing some areas and then I'm gonna go back into it. Try not to go over your tree with this one. Okay, let's grab just some Payne's grey or just some blue, and then add even more darker areas into this tree line. Okay. Just wanna do a bit of a more straight line over here. Okay. Now I have drawn out some flowers over here. I don't know if you can see them, but just little blotches, and I'm going to try with my first layer and go around them. So in our next lesson, we are actually looking at preserving white and different ways to do it. Of course, this is how one way to do it. Another way would be to use something like gum arabic or masking fluid to mask out these areas. But if you don't have any of those, it doesn't mean you can't do it. You're just going to do it like I'm doing it now. So I'm going to get a green, and I do want a bit of a lighter green. So if you don't have a light green, take the green that you have and add some yellow to it. And also make this first layer quite watery, because it's just a very first layer that we are doing. Just gonna give those trees a second to dry. Okay, so let's start with that green layer over here. So I'm going to go in with a light green, and it's okay if it the top part's still a bit wet, and if it blends into this, that's okay. So just going in with the light green. And then I'm doing a bit of a darker green, and I'll just go around some of these flowers that I've got here. So I'm not being too precise with this. So we are still going to add more details to this. This is just the very first layer. Don't overthink it, just do a bit of light green, a bit of dark green. just have fun. Okay. Now I do like to create some texture using dry brush. Just blending some of that color out. Okay. Now this is a field of flowers, so we do want to have some color in here. What color am I going to do my flowers? Let's do like a purple maybe. So I'm going to make a purple mixture. And maybe an orangey one as well. Thinking of that photo with the purple and the orange flowers. Okay, now I'm just going to put this paper towel over here, and I'm going to use one of my smaller brushes and just do a splatter. This one. So I'm using a smaller brush because hopefully I'll get a bit of a smaller splatter. So especially for those background flowers. And then also going in with the orange. So bigger brush, bigger splatter. Okay, let's move this to the side and do the same thing. Purple. Orange. Okay, let's let that dry. I'll use a hair dryer to help me with this step. Okay, let's do a tree. So as I said, use different color browns, not just all the same color, and start with a light mixture. So I'm first doing it with my big brush, and then I'll switch to a smaller brush, and then I'll switch to a rigger soon. So these would be my main branches coming out of here. This tree has these like loopy branches that goes down, so let's have a look how we can create that. Okay, let me switch to a smaller brush and going in with a bit of a darker color, and I want this to still blend and bleed into that one. So underneath this one So not just using one color, but creating that depth and shadows into your tree as well. And now I'm going to switch to Payne's Grey and add some Payne's Grey into my tree as well. And you can use a bit of that dry brush technique to bring out some texture into your tree. Let's have a look. So some of these tree branches will be in the back, some will be in the front. So making sure that background branches are a bit blue because they might be more in the shadow, or maybe they are in the light. So just have a think about it. So I'm using my small brush. This is a number 2 Princeton brush to do some branches, but then I'm going to switch to a rigger brush just now. It just gives you a nice variety in the thickness, and doing some different size brushes as well. Okay, let's switch to a rigger brush. And we're just going to have heaps of lines crossing each other, coming out of each other. You can do some of them darker, you can do some of them light. Do some of them in blue. You can have gaps in between them, so you're going to put some leaves there maybe. I might take it a bit further actually. I might take it. So what composition would you say this is if you look at this? Do you know which composition did I use? I've got an interesting sky, got an interesting foreground. I've got a tree that's not totally in the middle of the page. Tell me in class what you think, or comment what you think the composition is for this one. Okay, let's start with some of the branch or some of the leaves, and I want to do start light, and then we're going to build in some shadows. So I'm using my old brush that I often use and just dropping in some color, sort of going where I've put some branches as well. So these are like my top leaves that's catching some sun and some light. Okay, now let's go in with a bit of a darker green. So this is more underneath the other one, but of course we can have some of them blend into each other. Okay, and now I like to go in with some Payne's grey or really dark blue. Create some foliage in the back. And some shadows. I'm using just a bit of green again and just going over some of the blue. Okay, let's do a bit of a shadow area for this tree now. I think with this our shadow would be all around it, because the light is basically coming from the top. So let's do some idea of grasses over here. So I am using my same brush that I did leaves with, but I'm just doing some area of shadows, and then we can do, as I said, so it can go dark. Now for my flowers, of course they are gonna have some stems as well, so I'm using the same brush and especially here in front, just doing some lines nice and dark. We can do some of the rigger brush as well when we do our flowers. Then as I go to the back, I'm just going to add some tiny details here and there, just to get the idea of some grass fields. Not everywhere. Do you see I'm just putting these like little patches? These ones you can blend out a bit better. Okay, let's do some flowers. So first going in with that purple color, going to try and leave a middle part open for my flowers so that I can add a yellow or an orangey color. And I'm just going to do some different shapes over here, so all directions, some going into the middle. Might do another orangey flower there. So especially with the ones right here in the front, you do want to create some, so you do want to add a bit more detail to it. And then some of these little dots, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, give it some shape. Okay, same on this side. Let's do some. Let's do some orangey ones. So this is still just my number 2 Princeton brush. And then some of those little dots, just giving them some details too. On the side. Okay, let's get some yellow just for in the middle. So just in the middle, I'm just going to put a little dot, little yellow dot. And now I'll take my rigger brush and I will take a darkish green, and I'm just going to connect the flowers that I've done with a stem. So this isn't very dark. I do it a bit more darker. Just a little line coming from each flower, not taking it all the way to the bottom. Do you see there's still some white spaces in here as well? So I'm happy to leave that. If you don't want that, you can add more flowers or do more details. Okay, what else? I quite like it the way it is. I love the sky. Do you see, because we did with that perspective, immediately it sort of draws your eye in. You've got something here in the middle, you've got something interesting here, got an interesting foreground. What we might do is just a bit more, maybe depth, a bit more shadows in my grass if you want. So you can use this also to cover up some of those white areas so it's not so obvious if you want a bit less of it. Just using some of this blue to go over there. And same here, we can cover up some of those white areas. Oh, I know what we can add to this. Just blend some of this. Okay, let's have this dry and we're adding one more. Okay, now somewhere I have a yellow pencil as well. Don't know where that is at this moment, but in any case, here's a white one. So now we can highlight some areas from our tree. So maybe here at the top, some of the branches might be catching on the light. And highlight some of them, adding some details. If you're using a pencil, you can just use your finger to blend it in again if it's making too harsh of a line. We can add some little dots here just to highlight some of these leaves that you can't really see through the mountains at the back. So I might just do a bit of white on them. Okay, maybe here as well. Okay, and then I might just do some grasses here as well. Especially here in front of the tree. You don't just want to make it look like your tree just stopped and it's got nothing there. So going in with just a couple of white lines can really bring that to life. Then we can add some white in our flowers. Add some white in your grass. And that's it. Last thing we need to do, sign your name. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you learned something from looking at all of those photos, and I guess that's just the main idea of this, is to just start looking at the world as in perspective, as in color, what you're actually seeing. Because I think especially for me as well, the first time ever that I thought I want to paint clouds, I had a complete different, I wanted to do them bigger at the horizon and smaller at the top, and it just we don't always look at the world that way. My husband's very detail orientated, and he looks, I think he's just born with this natural ability to look at the world in this beautiful way where he sees every single detail. But I only started looking really at details. Maybe, you know, our minds are so full of things that sometimes you just don't notice it. But when you start looking at the world as in, what color is that? How would I paint that? Where is my shadow falling? You know, that kind of stuff. If you really look at that, especially if we're moving towards maybe next year to look at something like plein air drawing and drawing on location and going to different places and going to sort of sketch and paint, which is where I want to get to with this class eventually. But I think especially if we start practicing this, we will eventually be able to do that. So I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to my channel, and happy painting.